So let's break the news here. Spill the beans. You're already working on Casita, right? For the not yet announced Encanto musical. You've got to be working on that.
Well, I'm auditioning for the role, so
this is actually his live audition tape.
Yeah, I tried. I was pushing my agent for offers only, but it didn't really come back that way for me. So.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm Alan Seals. Heather and I started off as two perfect strangers who met by chance and embraced opportunity. Listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success. Is that good?
Okay.
Did I use my announcer voice that time, or was that normal?
No, it wasn't too over announcery. It was good. You sounded really smooth. It was more, like a good nighttime radio DJ sound than like the middle of the day.
Delilah.
Alan.
Yo.
We have waited months to have today's guest with us.
Oh, I know.
Because schedule conflicting is a bitch. Can you tell everybody who's here with us today?
I would love to, because I'm super excited. Our guest today is Alex Donnelly, who is the Vice President and GM, that means General Manager, of the Broadway division at Production Resource Group, aka PRG, which is how we'll refer to it most likely for the rest of the episode. So remember, PRG, it's a longtime global live event innovation company that turns creative dreams into technical realities, which is a mouthful, but I think super impressive. I can't wait to dive into this. So PRG's been a key innovator behind some of Broadway's most iconic moments for 30 plus years, including Phantom of the Opera. It's this brand new show that just popped out. And they provide state-of-the-art lighting, staging, scenery, automation solutions. I cannot wait to talk about automation because I'm a tech nerd. Alex also owns and manages Fortress Productions, a live events and theatrical production company, and was founding executive director of the Corkscrew Theater Festival, a multi-venue theatrical nonprofit here in New York City. Alex, holy shit, man. That was a mouthful.
Quite a resume. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad that we finally got to do this. I should say that this is not the end of the scheduling challenges, because I just got off a 3-hour delayed flight and I am in a airport lounge. So if there's terrible audio, please don't take that as a reflection on my company or my understanding of audio. It is the situation I found myself in. But glad that we're able to do this.
I appreciate the qualification. You're like, look, I know what good audio sounds like. I also know I don't have it right now. Don't hold it against me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although it does feel a little bit like when someone's auditioning, they're like, I have a cold, actually. So my voice, I usually sound better.
I usually sound better than this, so don't judge me on this, but it's your audition, dude. I have to.
It's not Alex's audition.
No. Well, he already got the part.
Everything is an audition.
Yeah, he already got the part. He's on the podcast.
I have to tell our listeners, because I think they'll appreciate this. Alan and I were doing a Heather and Alan thing, just chatting it up when Alex joined us, and we kind of apologized for rambling. And he goes, "It's okay. I've heard the intro to the show before." Let's dig in.
Yes, please. All right. So I've been so anxious to talk about this because theater automation for me is one of the coolest things about Broadway in general, right? Or theater in general. And Broadway is the Olympics of theater. I say this all the time. It's the best of the best. And for example, I saw The Life of Pi the other night, and brilliant. And it was automation it was like rising boat on a turntable, within a turntable, with the projector. Define for me, and make sure I'm talking about the right thing, what actual automation is. I just call it hydraulics. Am I even in the right ballpark?
There are sometimes hydraulics. Usually there would only be hydraulics when you see something coming in or out of a deck. Most automation, and the easiest thing over the years to do, I shouldn't say easy, but the thing that happens the most often is things coming in or out from a wing, or things coming in and out from above. So that is mostly done just with relatively simple automation equipment. You have a controller that is toggling the speed and the force and the direction, usually up or down, in or out. And then you have people on the sidelines controlling that. Usually, and I think where a lot of the magic happens, is the integration of automation with scenic elements. That's the thing that they can bring on and off stage right, because they have built into their deck an electrified knife that can carry something in. Maybe it'll spin it, and then it'll carry it off stage.
Electrified knife.
I know.
Yes, so this is where
I
you'll
was like,
see
what?
those little lines in your deck.
Deck
Right?
meaning stage for us,
Deck
for us
meaning
normal
stage.
people. Okay.
Deck meaning
For
stage.
people
although
who don't do this for a living.
Yes, sorry. Although a deck would be put down on top of
Fair enough.
whatever your stage actually holds. So if you don't have any automation, you can just use whatever deck, whatever stage comes naturally with your theater. If you want to do any sort of drops, any sort of trapdoors, something coming in or off stage right, a rake stage like you saw in Life of Pi, you would need to put on a show deck on top of that. That gives the depth to hide what we would call the knife, which is anywhere from 3 to 9 inches of steel. And that is actually the thing that is attached to motorized cable that is bringing something on or off. So imagine a 3-inch wide, 7-inch tall piece of steel. On top of that knife will sit the entire thing that you are automating, a 2-story wall that you are bringing on from off stage to on stage, and it is traveling along that little track. And so if you don't have a stage that has that track in it, you would need to come to a shop that specializes in scenic integration and automation, like PRG or one of our competitors. And they
We don't
would
talk about them.
No, fuck them.
I don't even know if there are competitors, actually. And they would be the ones to not just have the automation and control equipment, but also be the ones integrating that into your scenery. So it can be as grandiose as the traveling staircases in Phantom of the Opera, which is a relatively complicated automation system, especially for 1988, especially
Right?
for two people
Yeah.
who didn't really have a scenic shop at the time, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
And then, it could be as simple as, a window frame flies in from above in a relatively simple, uniset play.
So let's break the news here. Spill the beans. You're already working on Casita, right? For the not yet announced Encanto musical. You've got to be working on that.
Well, I'm auditioning for the role, so
This is
tried-
actually his live audition tape.
yeah, I tried. I was pushing my agent for offers only, but it didn't really come back that way for me. So we work on a lot of developmental projects with large entertainment companies at all times that we can't really talk about, but we'll see what happens.
Dude, if I nailed that, I'm going to be so proud of myself. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I'll never hear the end.
I know.
Okay, so first of all, that is cool. It's cool. It's amazing to be in the audience and to see this. It's fascinating to hear how those things actually happen. So I'm curious, how did you turn into the guy that knows all of that? Like what was the chance that you took way back when in your life that led you down this path?
Sure, I'll try to give the 7-minute version of this story, but I should also clarify that I am, of anyone that I work with at PRG, there's 225 of us in the theater division. There's up to 3,200 of us full-time around the world and 10,000 part-timers, freelancing, contract employees. I probably know the least of this technical theater.
Wow.
I came into PRG primarily as a banker, and that had been my previous career.
Right.
And I kind of got introduced to PRG a bit as a fluke, and somehow ended up working there, and then somehow ended up running the theater division. But I suppose back to where it all began, I think like all of us, or a lot of us, the interest in theater started pretty early. I grew up near New York City, and theater was a reward for a good report card or graduations or special occasions. So, throughout the years had seen Wicked with the original cast for, a good report card. And when the grandparents were in town, they'd take you to see the Radio City Christmas Spectacular. So I think I always associated theater with like good things, but didn't really know more about it than that. Starting in elementary school would kind of flip-flop between trying to be on the stage as a performer, in the pit as a musician, or in stage crew. And it kind of went that way, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade of elementary school would waffle. sixth, seventh, eighth grade of middle school, same thing. And then same thing in high school. And when I got to college, I really was pretty like professionally focused. I thought the reason to go to college was to get a stable, hopefully high paying job. And you do that and you meet people, and that's what college is for. And I got to college and really found myself like very depressed. I think it came from a place of like having one goal, one very specific goal most of my life, which was like get into a good college. And then you get there and it's,
what do you do?
Like, what do I do now? Like, what's all this for? Like, what's the point of this? And really just in trying to make friends, had people on my floor and roommates and friends who would be trying out for a show. And I was like, I don't really think I want to do theater anymore. Like, I'm going to stay focused on, what I think I want to do, which is finance at the time. And they would make up roles in the pit for me to play. I think I was keys 4 in the wedding singer. I've looked at the orchestration, like it doesn't exist. Like keys 2 is kind of as far as it usually goes. But was doing that. And then kind of the same thing that always happened to me in earlier years. I was in the pit and I was watching people, or I was backstage watching people, and thought like, yeah, this looks fun, or worse, I don't think it's that hard. And I started auditioning for the shows again, and knew that I was never going to make it as a performer. But really, I think that's when I really fell in love with the people in theater in a different way, and really kind of decided for myself by my junior year of college, I might be interning at Bank of America right now, but I want to get involved in my friends' fringe theater festival shows. And they all seem terrified about budgeting or asking people for money or whatever. And that never really bothered me. One of my first jobs at school was being a telephone fundraiser for our college, and asking strangers for money was something that I not only wasn't uncomfortable with, I thought I excelled at. And I thought this was something that I could do just to be involved, be in the room for things, truly not really contribute to any sort of creative vision for it, but just, these are my friends and I want to help them. Around that time, I started to learn about what producing was, or at least what I thought it was, mostly via Ken Davenport's blog, and then followed up by cold emailing producers and pretending that I was like some billionaire who had a lot of money to invest in shows. And I would pretend that like my father was going to invest in their shows. And my dad used to get these boxes sent to the house that would say like, all aboard the SS whatever. And it would have like, a black and white cookie in it and a cast recording and a hat. And my dad would be like, what is this? I'm like, that's for me. Thank you. I'm like, are the investment docs in there? That's what I care about. And then for the next 10 years, I kind of lived in both worlds. I was in finance at Bank of America, and then a smaller French bank called Natixis. For a minute, I thought that my path in theater would be work in finance for long enough to either meet a bunch of rich people myself, or have fortune strike me and be able to produce shows. But was doing that for about 10 years there. And then really, truly by chance, a friend of a friend, as I was starting my theater festival, encouraged me to reach out to their mother, who worked at PRG. The mother connected me with Jerry, who's the founder, now chairman, was our CEO for many, many years. And I thought I was going there to ask for some free lighting equipment. And then I started getting asked questions like, how good are you at PowerPoint and Excel? I'm like, it's all I do. So that's
finance in a nutshell right there.
That's all finance is, actually. I have a very expensive 4-year degree in Excel and PowerPoint.
More or less,
I learned that they were acquiring a big company called BER, and they kind of needed a internal banker, just like you would have an internal lawyer at some companies, to help them kind of put the whole thing together. So left finance.
You were the first mergers and acquisitions person for PRG, essentially?
I don't know that I was the first. I think they had been on an acquisition spree in the early 2000s. So there was always kind of that like financy role at PRG. And I was just the one that came in 2018. But truly, before I started the theater festival, had no idea what PRG was. When I went there to ask for lights for the theater festival, I didn't know how big it was, that they were involved in multiple markets. I mean, I kind of thought this was like some mom and pop company, not something with, 75 offices in 15 countries. And joined full time in at the end of 2017, early 2018, and was there through the pandemic. Unfortunately, the head of our theater division, Darren DeVerna, passed away in the middle of that. We miss him every day. Although it's funny, the contracts and negotiations he did for us pre-pandemic that we're still benefiting from. So in a way, he's still our top sales guy.
That's awesome. What a legacy.
But after he passed away, on a kind of interim basis, would drop by that shop for a little while. And then a couple months after that, Jerry asked me to take that on full time. So around the fall of 2020, took over the theater division.
Should have been easy. There was no theater.
There wasn't much to do. It was sort of, truly though, I had 2 years to every day just think about, like, I need to learn as much about this market as possible. I need to learn as much about the what of what we do as possible. And I need to earn the trust of both our internal stakeholders and our external ones.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back. That's cool. That's cool that you wanted to get in the theater sort of realm and went sort of a roundabout to come into the back door, because it sounds like now, the PRG designed the chandelier drop for Phantom of the Opera. We mentioned that in the opening, right? So there's things that I'm sure now you're dealing with the producers, you're dealing with the creative teams, and you're dealing with these major houses that you've always wanted to, just in a completely different way, and embracing that chance, literally, when it got handed to you in the middle of a pandemic, and had to figure out what the hell you're doing, because you came from a finance thing, but you just happen to love theater. So it's kind of this perfect merger, right?
Yeah, I think the real risk or that big chance was actually taking the finance job at PRG. I remember when I told my mother I was doing it, she started crying because she thought it was going to be, the most risky thing that I've ever done. And I'm like, the bank I just worked at shut down the division I was in. Like, it can't be riskier than that. But by the time I was at PRG, a lot of the heavy duty work of an integration is in the first 6 to 12 months. So I kind of had a little bit of time there when I had some time on my hands at PRG, started to learn more about the technical side of what we do. It also gave me the cloud cover, the air cover, I guess, to go take a meeting with an up and coming general manager or producer or creator. And I'm not the guy trying to sell you lights or automation or whatever. I'm just telling you about what PRG is and can I make any introductions for you and whatever. So moving into the theater role full time was definitely a nerve-wracking one because of the legacy and the history of the position. But I think I had the better part of the 10 years before PRG and a couple years at it where I was just taking meetings with producers and general managers and got to do so in a way that didn't feel threatening because it was only about relationship building at that time.
Speaking of threatening, do you see that guy just walk behind you and give you the look?
He was looking.
He was like, what is that?
You couldn't see him, Alex. He was behind you, but he's stopping and really, really curious.
Yeah, he looked very ominous coming in behind you.
It looks like he wants to talk to me about automation that has gone wrong.
Uh-oh. Wow. We will protect you. I just think it's really cool when the things that we feel passionate about manifest in really big ways in our lives that we could never anticipate. And I'm curious, has there been a moment where you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I went to college for finance and thought I wasn't going to be involved in theater anymore. And now this is my life. And I have the street cred to just, take a lunch with these badass producers in Broadway.
I've got two that I can give you. So after the pandemic, the worst of it had sort of receded and theater in New York was trying to reopen as triumphantly as possible. We all know it eventually was tough going there for a while, but I thought it would be fun just to be there for the first performance of Wicked. So September 14th, 2021, I brought my girlfriend, who's now my fiance, and
Congrats.
thank you. She'll be listening, so, and also thank you for listening, Allison.
Hey, Allison.
But it wasn't for work, really. It was just I thought it would be important to be there, and I wanted to see what that was like because I thought it would be fun to, one day tell my kids about or whatever. And I mean, the energy in the room was insane. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. It was joyous and triumphant, and people were weeping at the opening notes of the entr'acte, and the curtain goes up. Everyone's like, we stopped the show 7 times with standing ovations. And the next day, I just felt moved to call Ken Posner, the lighting designer, and tell him, like, this was one of the shows that made me want to get into theater. It still holds up so beautifully, like, and then kind of got into like the specifics of the lighting that I thought, when he did that in 2003, I'm sure he got a lot of pushback from producers because it was one of the most expensive shows at the time. There's more lighting instruments devoted to the audience, for if you want to think of it like atmospherics or stuff that's just front of house. Like there's, I think, 500 something units on that show. And I'm talking to him about how crazy that must have been and how it still holds up and what a magical time I had there and how his lighting contributed to it. When I hung up the phone, I thought to myself, like, in what world, even 5 years ago, would you have thought that you would have felt comfortable calling that multiple Tony Award winner lighting designer to talk to him about lighting? B, that you would have his number in the first place. C, that you'd be able to talk to him about light. I mean, it was one of those like moments for yourself that I think all of us have, of like, you take that mental snapshot of the world around you and think like, it's not just that I'm going to remember being at that show. I'm going to remember the phone call the next day because like it meant something to me as a check-in for myself and my own career of like, we all have days that are filled with self-doubt, but like that was a fun one. And that's one that I'll remember. And the second one that I'll give quickly is PRG was the lighting, audio, video, scenic, and automation provider for the recent revival of Parade. And our marketing team wanted to do, a piece on that effort. And it's one of the few times that we've done all of those disciplines at the same time. It's a very, it's a bigger show for us. It's kind of splashy in the media. And they had asked, is there anyone that you could think of who would be able to speak to PRG's contributions? I'm like, yeah, let me ask my friend Greg, the lead producer, we also co-own a tiki bar together. Like, let's have him. Let's have him, talk to our marketing team and see what kind of nice things he'll say about how handsome and sweet and kind I am. And while he's on the phone, our marketing people ask me, like, and Alex, just so we're clear, are there any specifically like new technology that was employed on the show or anything that like a gearhead would really be interested in? I started rattling off a few of the things that were either, new techniques completely or something that a specific designer's never done before or whatever. And when I finished, Greg said, I just want to take a moment and explain that I knew him as a banker. I don't know what anything he just said is, but he clearly does. And I think that was another, like, yeah, you get better at it every day, I guess, but only from not being afraid to ask questions that to a lot of people probably sound stupid or reveal how little you know about something. And you got to put the time in to do it. But yeah, I have those moments every week at least. And those are just 2 that kind of stand out to me as powerful ones.
When you get a design, I mean, I think of something like a Beetlejuice, right? Where the set becomes one of the characters because the walls are changing. They're moving. There's the back of the house is moving up and back, up and down stage. And I assume that it all starts as a model. Someone builds a model and then it gets turned into life-size things that then have to fit into the automation. Like, what's the actual process where, like, what chances do you have to take where you're like, well, no one's done this before, so let's figure out how to do it. And at what point are you like, oh shit, it's not going to work, we have to redo this? Or, oh yay, it did work, we
I
lucked
didn't really
out.
think it would, but it did. Yeah.
Listen, there are definitely shows that the thing that you hoped would happen just never really quite happened. They're the ones that people read about, usually not in the trade magazines, but things like the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and other things like that. So they do happen. They're few and far between. We try to keep that to a minimum, but it does occasionally happen. The general process, and it's sort of, I'll try to intentionally keep this a little vague because everyone's process is a little different, but scenic drawings are usually one of the first things that are due in a technical theater timeline. So the lighting designer can't know what they're lighting without scenic drawings. Drawings will come out first. The creative team will then use that to think about, is this communicating the ideas that we're trying to communicate? Do we have the playing space? Can this budgetarily kind of fit what we're trying to accomplish? Lighting, video designers are sometimes the first people involved because video and scenic have a special kind of relationship. Lighting's one of the last, audio is somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of fighting over overhead space because there just isn't enough of it in the theater. And through a negotiation that usually does not involve PRG, usually this is a production manager. No, but truly, it's we're not involved yet at this stage, or we are in a consultative way, but we're not engineering anything. We're not bidding anything out. We're not pricing things yet. A production manager will kind of take the helm and say, okay, only one thing can be at the exact center in front of the proscenium, and that's going to be some lighting fixtures, or it's going to be audio fixtures, or it's going to be a chandelier, or it's going to be a flying monkey, or whatever it's going to be. And then you kind of then figure out the Tetris of your overhead and backstage space from there. Once that is done, that's really when your models or any sort of like technical specifications will be written. And it's not always 100%. Sometimes you get 70% of the jockeying done and then lists come out and then there's more jockeying. But that's really when someone would engage PRG and others to engineer some of the scenery. So here's the drawing, here's the model. This is what I want it to look like. You tell me how this would happen. And in close consultation with the designers and the production managers, we will talk to them about, well, do you want to take this set and take it from Broadway and put it immediately on the road? Or do you think you would rebuild a set when you put it on the road? Because that's going to determine how resilient we need to make it.
I was going to ask about the touring later.
Are we trying to make this cheap? Are we trying to make this fast? Are we trying to make this efficient? You know, there's more than one way when you see what looks like a wrought iron gate or a brick wall to look that way. And depending on weight limitations and costs and how quickly it needs to come in and out of a theater, that will determine whether we are using real bricks, which we would almost never do, whether we're using, foam and hard coating it and painting it, whether we are using plastic, whether we're using printed vinyl. There's many different ways to accomplish that. We will, at some points, usually when a scenic designer specifically asks for it, we'll make a sample of an idea. So if there's a back wall that is, 60 feet wide by 30 feet tall, we will make a 3x3 version of that a few different ways. And oftentimes the creative team will come in, the director, sometimes the writers will come in, producers, to look in our shop and say, like, all right, so here, if I'm 40 feet back from that, which would be the first row of the audience, and let's put some lights on, and let's put some haze, and that's not, that's not doing what I want it to do, but that way is, so let's now proceed this way. So I say it's simple, but it's only simple in concept. To actually deliver these things takes a very large, very technically skilled team.
I'm with your friend. I'm like, I don't know any of the words of any of the things that you just said, but you seem to know, and that's very cool.
I think
I'm baffled at the process and the timeline. I mean, I don't know. We don't need to get into the technical stuff to this level, but like the rehearsals versus production, because once you start teching everything and everything starts breaking or working, whatever the case, it seems like a huge moment where like it's one of those things where, like I was asking, I guess originally was, is it going to work? Right? Because I assume that it's assembled outside and then trucked in and reassembled once it's going to work or not. But, you're making a face. Probably not.
So, well, you know what? I'm thinking to the Beetlejuice example. We did not do the scenery and automation for Beetlejuice, but I know when it moved to the marquee, The Marquee is one of the most challenging theaters to load into. It's got a really small elevator. You can't like back a truck right up to the stage door. It doesn't really work that way. So everything that you're doing, that's great that the scenic designer wants it to look like a 3-story thing with the car popping out of it and whatever else. It's got to fit in, if the smallest doorway from the elevator to the stage door is 8 feet tall by 3 feet wide, you've got a diagonal cross section of whatever the Pythagorean theorem says, 8 by 3, actually gets you. Like, it's all going to fit through there. And so your technical design and engineering actually gets more in the weeds of like, how do we break this whole thing down? How do we reassemble it? So we might do some test and adjust in our facility up in New Windsor, which is our scenic shop, where we have a massive tent that we could hang nearly anything in and test out any automation that we want. But it's going into the theater disassembled, and we are installing it on site. And I say we as a collective we. Most of that work is on the IATSE Local 1 stagehands.
And you and Allison, yeah.
And me and Allison personally, yeah exactly.
Yeah, I got it. The Tiki Bar and the theater festival and refereeing for hockey leagues, which I know you have experience in. Where are you, I guess where and how are you deciding where your focus goes? Because you've got a lot of different irons in multiple different types of fires.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Basically, you're strung out. You do too many things, and you're not really sure.
No, you know what? My approach to balancing has often been there can kind of be one thing that's your priority at any given time. So Corkscrew was a huge priority for us when we were starting it. And those first couple summers, it was, okay, we're at the theater every single day. And that means like, I would often build my banking vacations around when that was happening and when I would be most needed. And if my friends wanted to see me while that was going on, I would say, buy a ticket and I'll see you after the show. And then once it was over, I knew like, well, now it's time to like kind of pick up the slack that colleagues were carrying for me in finance or, start watering the gardens again in my personal life. I don't always know if it's the most sustainable thing, but we are trying every day to figure that out. Once I got the PRG theater job, though, a lot of that did get radically simplified. Like that is the huge number one, like the Tiki Bar fits in around that. Any other side projects I'm looking to do really fits in around that. Refereeing was on the weekends mostly or nights. And now that I am planning a wedding, that needs to fit in on the nights and weekends or Friday afternoons as much as possible. So trying to sort of simplify the areas that I'm focused in, and as much as it will pain me to say no to a friend, try to say yes to the things that I know I can be the most impactful in, but not try to spread myself too thin.
All right, one more quick break. Hang on a second. All right, here's the rest of the episode.
You know what? I got to tell you, as much as it is hard work to run a theater festival, it's not really that hard to start a theater festival. And I take no pride of ownership of rent a theater and try to fill it. It doesn't need to be Corkscrew's name above it. I welcome other people to take up that mantle.
I love that. I'd actually like to ask about that experience because I love that you said that. I think that one of the things that people have realized, especially since the pandemic, is there's nothing risked, nothing gained. Try new things. There are lots of ways to do something. You don't have to follow the old traditional path, and you can try new things. So when you say to the audience listening today, it's not that hard. Like there's a lot of work, but just play with it and explore it. You could be opening up so many floodgates for people that have these ideas. So could you share a little bit, briefly about your experience of starting it? And if somebody wanted to do that, like other than booking the theater, how do they do it?
Cold call a bunch of rich people and try to get some money. So Corkscrew came out of look, I think at that point I had done 3 fringe shows. A bunch of my college friends had also done their handful of fringe shows. And everyone undoubtedly in the middle of every process was like, I am never doing that again. This sucks. It's, it's exhilarating, I guess. But by the time you've done it more than once, it's sort of like, why does this happen this way? Like, why am I standing out in the rain with my one piece of scenery that I'm allowed to load in 15 minutes, and I'm standing right next to my parents who came to see the show, and this doesn't really feel professional. I'm trying to do something here. I had at some point, the first fringe show I did, it was in 2013. I had managed to guess Ben Brantley's email, and
that's amazing.
And I emailed him hey, you should come see the show. It's and I gave bios for everyone as if he was going to care what you did in your sophomore year music. It didn't, And he wrote back sounds tempting, but I'm in London and I do have that frame. Sounds tempting. Ben Platt
Absolutely.
on my first fringe show sounds tempting. But I just remember thinking this is not my best work that I'm able to do. No. Well, no, that is some of my best work. I'm pretty sure.
Is it tempting? Yeah.
But doing the way that Fringe allowed you to do theater was just not. I was proud of you did a thing, and doing a thing is hard. So I was proud of that. I was proud of the content, but I don't want to invite critics to this. This isn't how I thought I would. This isn't what I would want to introduce my producing career as. And in talking to some other colleagues who had done Fringe, we're yeah, this 15-minute load in, load out, that's nonsense. And by the way, why are we paying a participation fee? They take the box office split anyway. The people are kind of hard asses about anything you'd want to do. You want to put in a special. You want to have they don't like that. We're paying to apply to this whole thing. And what do you get for it? There's 200 other shows. You're not... Maybe other people had different experiences. No one was coming to see my shows because it was in Fringe. They were coming to see it because I invited them, or one of our actors invited them, or one of our creatives invited them. Mm-hmm. So with all of that, what are we getting out of this? And as we were noodling on, what would it look like if, 4 of us came together, we rented a theater for a month, you got the first week, I got the second week, someone else got the third. Fringe announced that they were taking a year off to think about stuff. I don't really know what they did with that year, but when we got that email, we said if we're going to do this, it's now. And we rented a theater. I want to say that first year, the theater was $3,000 a week. And kind of in our heads, we thought that was our only expense.
Oh, oops, surprise.
In New York.
It kind of was the most gating expense, and especially if we were running a festival, we kind of came up with this idea of what does your priority stack look like? And for us, it was making as artist first of a festival as possible. So we were not going to take participation fees. We weren't going to take application fees. We were going to try to survive ourselves on a box office split and fundraising. And we made it kind of I don't want to invite people from out of town to see a show at 10:15 in the morning on a Thursday. So we're not doing that. We're going to have nighttime shows. We're going to have matinees on Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to see what happens. And from there, by hook or by crook, we managed to raise about $15,000 or $20,000 our first year. And that gave us enough of a cushion to actually then do some of the all right, well, maybe we'll hire a press person because someone told us that's a good idea. So let's see. Let's try. I was definitely disappointed when post-pandemic it looked like this wasn't really going to come back. This isn't directly related to your question, but I think it's important to say you'd be surprised sometimes where your mentors are or where you'll find bits of good advice. Yeah. In 2018, around the time I was about to join PRG, I thought, let me just to check the box. Let me send out a resume to a couple theater producers or general see what happens. And I had what I would describe as the most ill-prepared, worst interview of my life with the producer, Jeffrey Richards, where in my cover letter, I wrote that his 2013 season on Broadway was one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to work in this professionally. And the interview started by him just asking me, you know, what do you think of this person? Do you think like they would work well with this person? Do you think, you know, if you were doing a new play, would you put this person as the star? Fumbling all over myself. And I think I said like no to too many of those prompts. And he kind of says like, my 2013 season is why you want to work on Broadway, and you don't think that any of these people who were in all of those shows or, you know, or would sell a show or have star potential or whatever. I'm walking away from that interview thinking like, I will never be able to look that guy in the face again. It's a disastrous interview. And in 2021, as theater was starting to come back, I reached out to him and said like, you know, I've got a new role at PRG I'd like to tell you about. Can we get lunch? We're getting lunch. I can't really officially tell if he knows who I am. You know, I'm just...
If he even remembers you.
Can't tell at all. There's no reference to anything from the past. And then at the end, he says, so by the way, how's Corkscrew going?
Oh.
And I'm like, oh man, like, you know, we're trying to like put the pieces back together, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. And he said to me, I forget the exact words, but something to the effect of, you know, sometimes these things are just meant to like burn bright and then you move on and you take the lessons you've learned and the relationships you've gained, and maybe you'll come back to it in the future. Maybe you won't. And that's okay. And that was like, okay, goodbye. Thanks for lunch. Like, I didn't even know this guy remembered me. And he had like, I was like really feeling troubled about that. And that's probably the right perspective. And he's been doing this for however long. He's probably right. And so that's kind of the way I think about it now, and why I say it's not that hard to start. I mean, like you need to have a community around you. You can't be doing it yourself. You need to have partners. You need to be able to rely on those partners. You need to have honest conversations about like what your capacity is, timeline wise, talent wise, and sometimes money wise. But rent the theater, like put up shows. A lot of times young producers will reach out to me and say like, you know, I've got this one show. Like, what do you think I should do with this one show? And, you know, I often don't even like, I don't read that script. I don't go see the show. I don't engage. I say like, it doesn't actually matter. Like right now you should be producing as many shows as possible, because if you do 10 of them, you'll start to realize, oh, what I really like doing actually is budgeting the show, but I don't like fundraising for the show or finding the theater for the show. Okay, you might be a great general manager, and you won't know that unless you're just like kind of keep getting those reps in and keep meeting people. And that's where you'll learn what types of people you like working with and what types of rooms you like creating and why you're motivated to do this in the first place. So I think if fear is the thing holding anyone back, like, you know, easy for me to say, I guess, because now I have done and closed that chapter, but just do it. And it doesn't need to look like someone else's thing. Like, you'll get there eventually if you want to, or you'll realize you don't want to, and you'll create something totally different and new. And like, that's wonderful. And that's what makes theater so resilient. So
that's what I was going to kind of lead into, or you're leading into what I wanted to get into next, which was sort of the relationship with failure, right? Which I'm sure if you've listened to the past episode, you know, we get into this, right? But like relationship with failure, and then an instance where I think you just described, where at the time it sounded like a mess up or a failure that turned into something positive. And it sounds like your meeting where your interview that you botched, which turned into, sounds like a pretty good mental model to live by now, you know, more recently.
Yeah, I think, look, I have never had to be the person whose name is underneath a title, whose creativity is on display for everyone to pass judgment on, and, you know, critics and friends and, you know, industry peers. I don't know what it's like to, you know, fail creatively in that way. But I will tell you, I felt every show that I ever did at Fringe or at a black box we rented or off Broadway or whatever. I mean, even though I was on the commercial side of it, I felt those reviews just as much as anyone did. But I think I've been privileged enough in my side of things to always be able to find, you know, either a mentor or a colleague or someone that I look up to who has kind of gone through something very similar and either by reaching out to them directly and wanting to talk those things through, or just in, reading their biographies or whatever the case may be, realizing like that's just part of the process. Like, what makes my team at PRG so good at what they do is that they have like encountered all of these problems before. Like, the reason we don't load in a show and completely fail on the automation is because we've loaded in 150 other shows that year. And
Right.
if you're not just like getting back into the batter's box, or on the horse, or whatever your favorite metaphor is, you're not going to learn from it. And then failure does become failure, like just entrenched capital F failure, because you didn't learn from it. I think that's the biggest failing. Like, things happen, especially as you're starting a chapter of your life. If you're switching careers or moving into a different area of one, you're going to think it's failure. But anyone else will probably look at it and say like, yeah, that's what you do on your second show. Like, you undercapitalize and you overspend,
Yeah.
and like, that's what happens. So your third one, you won't.
Sophomoric behavior. Yeah.
In the industry too. Are you, I guess, sharing in the accolades in like Tony Awards specifically in theater and whatnot? Because I'm just looking like more recently this season alone, you've got Some Like It Hot and Juliet, right? Which two of my favorite shows. I think Anne Juliet's got a very strong chance of taking away the Tony. That's what I put my money on.
You were supposed to take me to see it, Alan, and you've let me down.
Well,
sorry.
There will be a tour that PRG has to design a set for, because Broadway is going to keep going. They're not going to use the same set.
Yes.
But yeah, so are you sharing in all of that? I guess from the creative side, like when a show goes up on stage and you see all 50 of the producers and all of the creative team and everybody up there, are we going to see you up there for Some Like It Hot or Anne Juliet?
Typically, no. I mean, we're not the producers, so we don't get up there. Some of the people that we work with do produce. I will co-produce occasionally, usually just if it's friends that I want to support. Jerry, Darren, while he was still alive, a lot of the founders had relationships with producers and would want to, in the same way, either support them or sometimes just completely produce a show, soup to nuts themselves. Generally, though, I think some of our proudest achievements is when one of the shows that we've worked on does win like a design award, and we are not the designers. We share no actual credit. We don't, you can't look up how many Tony Awards PRG has won because doesn't really exist. Or, Jerry Harris has a lot himself, but that's a different story. But knowing that you contributed to that and thinking about, wow, yeah, when Anne Juliet was in Toronto, the idea was this, and we worked it out by, moving this around and switching how this was done, and, proposing this that was ultimately bought into or challenged by a design and production and creative team. And then we got to the show on Broadway that I think we're all really proud of. On that show, we did the scenic, the automation, and the lighting. And I was more involved in putting together the lighting package than I was the scenic and automation. And if Howard Hudson wins the Tony Award for lighting, like, I'm going to feel, and my team is going to feel like we really contributed to that. And similarly, if Natasha wins for Some Like It Hot, we will feel like we contributed to that. And it's a strange, like, behind the scenes pride about it. It's a pride that like a very, very small group of people will know or care about. But we feel we get deeply invested emotionally in the shows that we work on. Once a show loads into Broadway, that's not the end of the story for us. There's a lot of support that happens on an ongoing basis. We run AM and PM vans into the city every single day. We are doing support calls almost every single day. The reason that theater goes on like it does is because there's a lot of people behind the scenes, both on PRG staff and in the unions and our partners in production and design who are working around the clock to make that happen.
It's such a treat to see, again, how these things manifest in our lives, how just kind of keeping your toe dipped in and your mind open and being willing to ask for the hard thing. I love that. I love that you said that you can have almost anything you want if you're willing to have a hard conversation and ask for it. I'm paraphrasing, but
And make cold calls.
And make cold calls. Well, that's it,
and
right?
have bad interviews.
Ask for it and
can I put a finer point on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
The example I gave of the conversation with my marketing team and Greg, where, a person now who I've known for 10 years that I own a tiki bar with, and we've done a lot of shows together, both in my role at PRG and outside of it. I know him because I sent him a cold Facebook message in 2015 or 2016 and said, like, I keep hearing your name. You and I seem to be kind of trying to do similar things. I'd love to meet up and pick your brain about what you're working on. And like, we both go back to that first Facebook. It's so cringy in a way because of, how close we are now. But like, that's where that started from.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Other people who are trying to like make their careers at the same time as you, no matter what stage you're at, are going to, I think, be your most natural like sounding boards, and if you can call them mentors, but people who are going through the same trials and tribulations as you, and be your rocks as you succeed and fail together or separately. So it is actually, in my world, it is the cold email. It's don't be afraid to reach out to people and just say what you're interested in. Don't be afraid of that.
I love that. And that is taking intentional risk for creative success. So that's a lovely way to end the interview. Alex, thanks so much for prioritizing being here with us. I know that the universe was conspiring against us, but it was really great to get to know you. I love what you're doing. Is there a way for folks to connect with you or follow you or what you're up to?
Yeah, if you're a technical theater nerd and you love that kind of stuff, please follow PRG North America. On Instagram is my preferred social media app of choice. I am at AR Donnelly on nearly every social media. I'm most active on Instagram, though. And send me all the cold emails you want. I read every single one of them.
Do you really?
Yeah, try to.
Because it's like, hey, I found your podcast. You're a great fit for our brand of dog leashes. Like, no, you didn't read my shit.
But you're a guy who sends them, and you hope that somebody opens them and reads them and gives you a chance. And so you can't want that for yourself if you're not willing to give it to other people. And I think that's super badass. Thank you so much, Alex. We're really glad to have some time here with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Followed PRG North America.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye, Alex.
I'm totally nerding out on this.
Say goodbye, Alan.
Goodbye,
Alan. Heather, I dorked out so hard on this shit.
Dude, yes. I hope. Thank you to anybody who's actually listened long enough to get to this end part. Not because Alex wasn't fascinating and super fun and wonderful to talk to, because he was, but it was some high level dork tech talk that not everybody can follow.
I loved it. I love that high level, or maybe it's low level, depending on how detailed you want to get.
It was high level.
I am fascinated by people like him that I feel like I can relate to it a little bit, because he wanted to get into theater, found a backdoor in. He found a roundabout way by chance, by embracing this opportunity that came to him to take this position after thinking his career was going to be in marketing. And now he's working with some of the people that he used to idolize that got him into the love for theater in the first place. And it's so cool to hear about those kind of stories.
So cool. And I love just sort of the who gives a fuck, try it, reach out attitude. Not everybody has that gene, but we all could, right? If you decided it doesn't matter if the email doesn't get opened, the phone call doesn't get returned, or even if somebody's mad at you for it, which they probably won't be, they'll just ignore you. If we decide we can get over that, like the opportunities in front of you are tremendous. And Alex is living proof of that. And I really loved that he's like, you cold email me. I read them because they make a difference. And I never know when the next person that's going to change my life is going to show up in my inbox. And that's such a cool perspective. We love spending quality time with all of you in each and every episode of Was It Chance? And we feel like even though we don't see you, you're part of our little Was It Chance family. So we want to know how you're out embracing chance, taking intentional risks, manifesting your own creative success. Alan, how can folks share their own stories with us?
By putting pen to paper and sending us a cold DM or a cold email. DM through the Instagram at Was It Chance is our username, and wasitchancepodcast@gmail.com is our email. We will read the emails too.
We will.
Promise.
And
we
the
will.
DMs. We promise. And
yeah,
we will respond.
We will RT the DM.
The other thing that would really mean a lot to all of us is if you not only subscribed or followed, whatever your preferred platform calls it, and rated and reviewed the show so that other folks can find us. We appreciate it. You have been listening to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. Thanks for being here. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm Alan Seals.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye.